uh, otherwise known as Fly Fish Fork. We've made a little change on kind of reintroducing fly fishing on Lake Fork, and trying to sort of broaden our audience and get a little more involved in our media, stuff like that. So we sort of rebranded to get things going again, since we're really just kind of getting going again. With uh, I'm gonna I'm gonna go ahead and continue. Okay, enough of that. Welcome to the show. I am here to do a weekly fly fishing report. I want to also show you. I'm sorry, I got gnats. Gnats. Hate them. Um, we've got some fly fishing report to do for Lake Fork. We've also got. We're going to show you some of our top flies that we're using to catch fish, and we're catching quite a few fish, mostly in the evening. But we'll get into that in a minute. And then we're going to talk about some conservation. I had a long conversation with a new friend of mine yesterday, and I'm going to actually be working with him on his podcast from time to time. And I'll get all that information to you when I'm ready to, when I know, actually. Get this light turned on here. And there. There's some color. Um, and so we're going to talk about conservation and some of my thoughts on conservation for all of us flat water fishermen that are fishing on these lakes. Some people don't seem to really care, and they don't think about it. I guess maybe they come from some place where they don't have to think about it. They get out here and they think everybody else is just going to take care of it, and they don't have to worry about it. So we're going to have a different discussion about that today. So let's do this. Let's talk about a fly fishing report first. So on Lake Fork right now, the water is coming up slowly. It's a little bit less than 2 feet, which is good. We're getting some rainstorms coming and going, and every time that happens, the water comes up a little bit. We're not getting any long, 2 or 3 day rainstorms. We're getting these kind of pop-up things that put a lot of water out at one time. They keep promising us that we're going to have 4 or 5 days of rain, and the rain gods don't agree with them, so they're not they're not they're not. Being nice to the weatherman. Let's just put it that way. At any rate, the lake has improved quite a bit because it was around 3 feet low, and now it's only about 2 feet. And I think hopefully, if the weather is semi-accurate the next few days, it may come up some more if we get the rain that they're predicting. We would love to see it come up some more. It's still quite dangerous out there with stumps. Be super careful if you come out here in a boat, or even a kayak. Anything that you're floating on the water, please be careful, because there is a lot of stuff right under the surface of the water that you can't see. You'll see in some of my videos I've been putting out where I get hung up on stumps, and I might give a little free advice, a little advice about getting off those stumps. I did that the other day. It was pretty funny. And so they're still there. That's the point. And then I don't know about there were some sandbars out there. I think they're probably okay now, so you probably don't have to worry about that too much. So let's talk overall about the bass fishing. We'll start out with our bass fishing. That's primarily what we do this time of year. And the bass in the evening, when I'm doing most of my fishing, and I think probably early in the mornings, very early and a late bite, or they're shallow, and now there's a lot of smaller bass that you're going to catch. Now I'm fishing with topwater mostly. I'll go through that in a minute, but there's mostly smaller. They're not huge, except that it seems like every time I go out, I hook into a nice slop fish that might be 5 or 6 pounds, 4 pounds. And now, when you watch my videos, you'll go, he said that's 5 pounds. That looks like 3 pounds. And we all do that. When you catch a big fish and you fight it, you get it in the boat, you're all hyped up, and you're you're like, boy, that's a 10-pound fish, and it's probably about 3. So you'll have to pardon my exuberance when I catch a larger than average fish. So I think most of us do that, and I don't sit there and weigh them I don't want to put the fish through that. I want to get the fish up, take a picture of it. If it's in my video, and when you're using a GoPro like I do, I can just hold it up in front of the camera, and then when I'm editing, I can hit grab photo, and it grabs a photo of the fish, which is all I want. It just saves me from having to pick up my phone and get to the camera and take a picture and all that stuff. So anyway, I digress. Bass fishing has been phenomenal. I like to go out in the evening. The fish are more active about the last couple of hours of light. I've been going out around 6 o'clock, and it's getting dark now around 8:30. In fact, it might be closer to 9 now. And so I'm going out around 5, 6 o'clock, and I'm getting really consistent bites on top water, and I'm getting some, depending on the conditions, I'm getting some action on subsurface, which are just streamers that I throw. I'm picking my spots pretty carefully because I know that the fish, here's what's happened. The lake was down about 3 feet, and a layer of vegetation started growing up on, like duckweed and milfoil and all this stuff started growing up on the top of the water like it does. And then the lake came up about a foot. So a lot of that stuff is now right under the surface. And so that is, to me, the absolute primo condition for fishing, and particularly for fly fishing. I love it when that vegetation's 5-6 inches under the surface, and then I can throw a fly that swims right over that vegetation, or pop a popper right over that vegetation, and I'll get a lot of action. Now remember, that vegetation, that was bank. A lot of that was dry, sandy bank a month ago. And so there's blank spots in it where something didn't grow. So inside that vegetation are kind of holes, and I call them holes, but it's just clear areas where there's nothing growing. The vegetation's growing all around it. Well, those bass get back in that vegetation around those holes, and they use that as cover to ambush prey that come into that clear area. So don't forget to fish those holes. That's where I get a lot of my action, and I'm getting a lot of my action on the outside of the weed line. So I don't necessarily feel like I need to throw my fly out there 50 or 60 feet. Wherever the outside edge of that line is, I'm happy to fish right there, because again, those fish are back. Some of them are back in that vegetation, and they shoot out of there and they attack their prey. Now, there are some fish, I noticed the other day when I was in an area, that there were fish that were just cruising, and they weren't like really big giant bass or anything, but they were nice fish, and they were just kind of cruising around the edge of that vegetation to feed. Again, this is late in the afternoon or early evening, and that's a lot of times when they do that. So think about those conditions when you're out there fishing. If you're fishing on the bank or from the bank, you can fish 30 feet out. If you're fishing from a boat, if you can, throw parallel with the shore, and throw parallel where you're coming actually over whatever is underneath the water there, or brush, or whatever it is. Now, and I say this a lot to you guys. I call it dark spots. So when I'm fishing, I look in the water, and if I see an area that is dark under the water, then that, and particularly if I'm on kind of a blank bank, like if I'm fishing I like to go out and try the places that people don't try. They'll look at it and go, there can't be a fish over there. There's nothing growing there. And so that's what I'm going to try. And I'm going to, if I see a stump, or if I see a just like blank, a dark area. In a dark area, that could be a little patch of grass growing under there. Those fish will get in those little areas and use that for their cover. And I can't tell you how many fish I catch doing that. So try the dark spots under the water. That's where you want to be. The brim are getting really aggressive. They're bedding now. I haven't been able to. I haven't seen as many brim beds, but I haven't really been looking for them. The way I know that they're bedding and they're getting a lot more active is they come up and they attack my little frog or whatever I'm throwing. And so the brim are, and of course, they're shallow, and the brim will bed anywhere from uh, a couple, 12 inches of water till to 6 or 8 feet of water. And once they've established that bedding area, if the lake comes up, they're not going to move. They're going to stay there. So keep an eye out on that. And if you're out in a boat and you're using your graph, mark that spot so you can remember it. When the lake comes up, I'm just going to tell you, when the lake comes up, if you've been fishing out here in low water and the lake comes up to normal level, or a foot or whatever, it completely changes the way everything looks. Your perception of distance, your perception of depth, everything changes. And so it's best to mark on your graph if you can do that. Now, yesterday I was out, or day before yesterday I was out, and I was fishing windy banks, and I noticed that I kept having catfish come up, and they were attacking my bait. Um, and I actually had like 3 or 4 of them in one area. And so that's telling me the obvious, that the catfish are spawning now, and the catfish can be a heck of a lot of fun on that fly rod, heck of a lot of fun. So if you have, they'll hit a little streamer, they'll hit a clouser. They're crazy on a clouser. Take a clouser, particularly one that's either brim or shad color, and fish that in shallow water. Catfish will spawn in between, like like the bank and 3 feet of water. If there's a bunch of stumps there, or there's brush there, something like that, try fishing around that. You'll find an area that'll hold a lot of fish. And boy, I'll tell you what, they are an absolute gas on the fly rod. Give that a try. The crappie are down deeper. They never have really come up shallow. For some reason this year, it seemed like they spawned deep. That's what my crappie guys are telling me. And so they're down in 18, 20 feet of water. Now, I know there were some people that were catching shallow crappie. I caught a few, but I didn't get that bite that I usually get, where I'm just going down the bank, just filling up my live well with nice crappie. It was just a real sporadic bite for me on the fly rod, which is unusual, because usually crappie get up shallow and I can really have a real productive day fishing them. Didn't have that this year. Another thing, if you're adventuresome, is to take your, and I'm going back to bass here, take your fly rod, put some sink tip on it, and put as big a bait as you can throw that will sink, and hit the brush piles. And there are huge bass out on those brush piles. The guys are catching 7, 8 pound bass out there like crazy. The big bass are hanging out on those brush piles and are feeding on the crappie that are down on those brush piles. And they particularly seem to like it when you catch one and you're reeling it in, and the bass decides he's going to steal it from you. It happens all the time. That actually happens with me when I'm brim fishing, and I get a brim and I'm bringing it in, and all of a sudden I look down, and sometimes I'll see 2 or 3 bass fighting over it. And so it's really a lot of fun. You never know. Bass love eating bigger baits. They love those brim. and they love those crappie, those panfish size baits. So anyway, that's another little tip. If you're in a boat and you see brush pile out there and you have some sink tip line, I don't know, try a clouser, try something that'll sink down with your line. Even if you can get a bigger streamer down there with it, that would be really good. And you might also lose a bait because those piles are pretty darn brutal. If you're a crappie fisherman, you know what I'm talking about. If you've dropped a jig down there enough, you've lost plenty. And so that happens as well. Um, so that's kind of our fishing report. And in general, the fish have moved into their summer patterns. And for bass, that means they're going to be shallow early and late feeding. Early would be sunrise to maybe mid-morning if you're lucky. If you have cloud cover, maybe a little bit longer. You'll still get some if you cover enough territory. In the evening, the last 2 or 3 hours of light has been real productive so far. The other thing that I want to quantify all this with is that we've had really good weather. We haven't had kind of what we typically expect. So typically here in Texas, at the beginning of June, the summer solstice starts, and the wind quits blowing. It's done. It'll quit blowing all the way to October. It just doesn't blow anymore, and it gets hot, and it gets really hard to stay out in this heat. This year, so far, that hadn't been the case. So far this year, we've had a lot more activity with the weather pattern bringing the jet stream, bringing stuff off the Gulf right over us. So we've had a lot more clouds. We've had more chances for rain and things like that. And that's supposed to continue for the next couple of months. Actually, some guys are saying up until next spring. I don't know how it's going to affect us directly. We're supposed to have a little cooler summer than normal, which is always welcome news around here. So we should have a nice long fishing season this year where it's a lot more comfortable. So let's talk about some flies that I'm using. This is we call this Tweety Bird. He's got a little piece of string hanging off of him. This is my version of this guy right here makes a lot of noise when you strip him in the water, and he makes a really loud gurgle and puts a lot of air bubbles in the water. I've got a couple of different, I only brought one, but I tied this in different colors, different sizes. Some of them are a little shorter. And particularly bass, I catch lots of bass with this, and I catch them mostly the evening when I'd be throwing a frog. That's kind of what I think that noise and that look. But isn't he cute? Isn't that the cutest little Tweety Bird lure you've ever seen? Kind of makes you want to take him home and feed him. This is our little frog. I call it a Lake Fork frog. This little guy right here. Now I've got kind of long, silly legs on him, but I'm going to cut those off a little shorter. I want them really to be right about here. That's where I want them. I'm trying to get this where you can see it. Anyway, these are just little rubber frogs, frog pattern. I don't do any coloring on them, no eyes, none of that stuff. It's not necessary. And this guy right here has a little weed guard on him. It's kind of hard to see. And I cannot tell you how many bass I've caught with this pattern over the last few years since I started tying it. It is incredible. And this thing will go anywhere. If you're over weeds and you use this type of weed guard, or if you're pulling through weeds, or some of this green grass that's growing on the top of the water right now, pull it real easy, and it'll pull through it without getting hung up. If you pull it too hard, it'll get hung up. But if you pull it easy through there, just kind of work it through there, it'll do real good for you. This right here is catching bass, a lot of smaller bass, and occasionally I've got a video we'll be putting out later in the week that's got a 6-pound bass, well, 22-inch fish that I caught. However much that weighs, probably about 5 pounds. It probably was 8 pounds 6 weeks ago. Another pattern that I'm using is this Mike Maris pattern. Mike is a friend of mine and an excellent fly fisherman, and he showed me this pattern. Now this is kind of interesting. It's another foam pattern. It's a lot like that last one I showed you, kind of in the way we tie it. So you still have that same sort of back and tail and all that. The difference with this is that it's got this big flat top on it, this big lid right here. And that thing, when you strip this, that forces that thing to dive under the water 6 or 8 inches. And you can continually strip it when it's underwater and let it just kind of swim, or you can just do short strips. Now, if you ever watched a frog swim and observed a frog swim, you will notice that that frog will swim under a certain distance, not necessarily, sometimes long, sometimes short, and then it'll float right back up to the top like that. That's exactly what this thing looks like in the water. It is deadly. I've caught so many fish with this, particularly around lily pads and grass. The cool thing is I keep a pair of scissors with me, and I can trim the size of this because sometimes I have a pattern that I use to make these with. I'll tie one up and put a video out. But this right here is a really, really good pattern to use for bass. I got to tell you. And then finally, when I'm wanting to go subsurface, pretty much any time on Lake Fork, I'm never afraid to use just a hollow tie shad pattern. Let's get this guy. We'll get him looking right. Doesn't taste very good, but that's what he looks like when he's wet. And that, my friends, that's the key. When he's being stripped through the water, he has a profile of a fish, a good profile. Now I put those tab eyes on him. You can see I'm missing one. So this is our one-eyed our one-eyed shad. Anyway, this is a killer pattern. If you're tying your own flies, you know what I'm talking about. And you can do it. I do all kinds of colors, but this color right here really kind of simulates the fish that the bait that these fish are feeding on, and the size of it is a lot of times just perfect. So keep that for your subsurface. And if you'll see it, if you're fishing and you see a fish come to the surface chasing something, hit that spot, man. That's how I've been catching some fish lately. When that happens, you've got an active fish, he's feeding, and when you throw something over on top of him, he's going to react to it. So make sure and keep your eyes open when you're fishing. Now, as fly fishermen, we don't have these live scopes and all that stuff. We actually watch the water. We don't watch a screen. We actually watch what's around us. No offense to anybody. I don't mean to be offending anybody, but that's just, it is what it is. Today I wanted to spend the last few minutes, I wanted to talk about conservation. I had a fantastic conversation with a new friend of mine yesterday. We talked quite a bit. He's a trout fisherman up in Colorado. He and I will be doing a podcast together occasionally, so At some point, I'll get all that information out here when I have it. But what we're talking about is conservation and how we need to start promoting and encouraging people to be more conservation minded when they're fishing. Now, I've talked about this a little bit on Lake Fork, usually because I'm pissed off that I go across the lake and I find garbage floating in the lake and I have to pick it up and put it in my boat. Uh, because I rarely will go by anything floating on top of the water and not pick it up. And I understand that if you're going 60 or 70 miles an hour across the lake, stuff is going to might blow out of there. I get that. You may not know what blew out of there. So I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody. It happens to all of us. Occasionally I lose. Hell, I lost my hat and it sank to the bottom. And I had to call my friend Steve right here at Mudfish and have him send me another one because this is my favorite hat, even though it doesn't even have my name on it. But it's got my buddy Steve Stubbe down there, Captain Steve Stubbe down there on Toledo Bend Reservoir. He's an excellent fly fisherman, excellent rod builder, excellent human being. Give him a call if you're going to be around Toledo Bend. Okay, enough for you, Steve. Okay, you're welcome, Steve. I want to talk a little bit about conservation, about some things that we could do to, we need to preserve these lakes. I know that one attitude that, and I used to have it, and I've talked to people recently that still have the same attitude towards our fish in these lakes. Well, they're renewable, and if they, if it gets bad, they just need to put more fish in there. Well, it ain't going to matter how many fish they put in here if they're putting them in a mud hole. If they're just putting them in something they can't survive in, it doesn't matter. If you've got a lake, you need to take care of all of these lakes. We need to take care of them. We need to pick our trash up. One tip I wanted to talk about today with conservation: make sure that your motor is not spewing gasoline into the water. It does spew all kinds of stuff just coming out of the exhaust. I don't know what all that is, but I know it does, because all combustion engines do. So we already know that we're spewing some kind of garbage in there through our exhaust systems in our boats. But if you'll make sure that your engine's not leaking some sort of petroleum product into the water, it could be your lower unit fluid. Maybe you got a little screw loose there and there's a few little drops dripping out of there every now and then. It could be that you need to clean take your cowling off your motor and clean it up. There could be oil or gas or something floating around in there. That happens too. Just look at it and see, and make sure that you're not polluting the water with that stuff. I see a lot of, I have two boat ramps right next to each other where I live, and when we have real busy weekend and you get out there, there's an oil slick on that water. Got it. There's an oil slick on that water, so you want to make none of us like it. I'm not an exception here. None of us like it. We all want the water to be clean and the lake to be healthy. I get that. I know that we have kind of diverging or whatever it is. We have conflicting opinions sometimes. If you're a property owner around the lake, you've got a dock, you paid a lot of money for all that stuff, and you've got a bunch of weeds growing in there, and you can't get your boat in and out of your boathouse because of the lily pads and the hydrilla and the coontail and all that stuff that's growing in there. I totally get it. And maybe you decide you need to get someone to go in there and spray some weed killer and eradicate those weeds so you can get in and out of your boathouse. Man, I totally get that. My hope is that what you'll do is you'll find somebody that knows what they're doing. Don't ask your yard man to go out and spray Roundup in the lake. You need there's special products that they can use, special a non-windy day. Maybe there might be a certain temperature of the water that's best, certain time of year that's best. Um, what has happened in the past, it happened here at Lake Fork about 20 years ago. They sprayed it. They weren't keeping an eye on the people that were spraying it. I don't know if they were paying them by the gallon. I don't know what happened, but I know that it killed a lot more grass than was ever intended, and it ended up taking years and years for that to grow back. We're finally getting back. And I also understand that some of these lakes are water supply, and as is Lake Fork, and they need to go in and they need to do certain things to protect their investment in their pump system and all that kind of. I get that. We all understand that. We as sportsmen and women need to do our part to conserve the integrity of the lake, protect the integrity of the lake, and that will keep a better fishery. It'll be a lot more fun, a lot more enjoyable. And there's nothing better than clean water to look at when you're fishing. So keep your trash out of there. Keep your engine from leaking junk into the water as much as you can, and try and use baits that are water soluble. That when they get pulled off your hook, that they don't hang out there. We've caught lots of fish that have worms stuck in their throats and they're stunted. Some fish just die from it. They starve to death. The worm goes down their gullet and it gets hung up in their intestines. Eventually they starve to death. You can tell if it's a really long, skinny fish, it probably hadn't been eaten good because it's not getting any nutrition. So anyway, do the best you can. I'm doing the best I can. And I think that's going to be it for today. I ran way longer than I intended to, but I had a lot to say today. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you everyone for jumping on here and checking this out while we've been broadcasting. We had 25, 30 people on here at one point, which is excellent. Thank you everybody that is staying up with the channel, and I really do appreciate your encouragement, and hope you'll subscribe to Fly Fish Fork 2023 on YouTube. That's this channel. And check out our website, flyfishinglake.fork.com. And if you want to take a nice fly fishing trip out here on Lake Fork, contact me at alex@flyfishfork.com and book a date. You can also go to flyfishinglake.fork.com and you can book me straight from there and pay for it. Wow. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful, safe weekend. Catch a lot of fish. This is Alex signing off.